This title of a keynote from the godfather of threat modeling really caught my eye. It had me doing a double take. Stop trying to manage cyber risk. If you're in GRC like I am, are you used to getting dunked on like this? And do you want to know a better way? It's not news that there's dysfunction with risk management practices out there in industry. That's why we have things like the GRC Engineering Manifesto. The thing is, I think it can be done properly. And even more than that, I think it's actually a great place that's underrated for you to make a difference and to advance your career. Hey, I'm Steve McMichael with Simply Cyber Media Group. By day, I'm director of GRC at a software company. And in this video, I'll decompose arguments for why risk management doesn't work. So you'll know bad practices when you see them, and you'll know how to fix them. But we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm also going to share 5 effective practices that you should do. And that's going to help you advance good GRC outcomes. It's going to be good for your company and for your career. Let's get after it. So here's Adam Shostak's keynote from OWASP Global AppSec. I've been following his work for years. I found a lot of value in his threat modeling practices and even had the privilege of a consultation with him about that a few years back. The guy knows his stuff. And he asked the audience, how many of you have done risk quantification that directly led to a decision? Not many hands go up, and that's a fair critique. I think if you were to do a poll, you might find the same. Too often, risk management is performed as a Ouija board-like ritual. Heat maps are generated, registers maintained, boxes checked, but decisions remain unchanged, and it's not adding value. Anything not adding value, of course, needs to stop. The manifesto here calls out complacency with manual toil and trivial outputs, transactional relationships, shallow and narrow problem-solving mindsets. These are opportunities for improvement and to make a difference. And then there's the pretty insidious problem of risk theater, whether it's outright fraud, which is really bad, or kids, did you clean your room type compliance. That's a great analogy from Chris Hughes in Resilient Cyber. I don't know about your kids, but if it's mine, they're notorious for throwing everything in a closet when you come for a weekly inspection. And then when you, as the auditor, leaves, the door opens, everything flies out, and there's a big mess until the following week. And Chris points out that attackers don't just probe and attempt to exploit systems once a week, a month, or a quarter. They're jiggling doorknob handles and firing angry packets around the clock. So we've got to be better than that. We can start with Tony Martin Vegg's awesomely named Heat Maps to Histograms blog. And he shares a story about his epiphany, which he calls his boardroom moment. Picture yourself as the cyber risk person at an executive leadership meeting. You put up your heat map and it says, DDoS risk is high. As you can see, it's right here in the red quadrant. The executives nod politely and move on. No action. Meanwhile, the insurance risk person comes up and says $50 million exposure. The financial risk person follows and says 300 to 500 million. Those presentations are going to generate real conversations to inform smart strategic trade-offs. This true story is why we see in the Director's Handbook on Cyber Risk Oversight that legacy practices just don't cut it anymore. They don't allow the board to understand the materiality of cyber events or to properly assess the adequacy and cost-effectiveness of risk mitigation initiatives. The thing is, though, that heat maps aren't inherently bad. They're just in the wrong room here. Ordinal scale, stack ranking in order, high, moderate, and low, is perfect for operational triage. Think hospitals, code blue. You know to stop everything and get to that patient. But that approach never signed up to communicate dollars at stake. Another problem is that false precision backfires. Let's say you decide to be data-driven and quantitative, and you present, our annual loss expectancy is $4.7 million. Well, how'd you get to that number? Out of a crystal ball? Expect some blowback in the form of misaligned stakeholder responses, obscured actionability, and prevented meaningful risk conversations. Because you can't predict the future, right? It's highly uncertain. You're not a fortune teller, so don't try to be. But here's what other industries do. They don't just walk away. They use ranges. Pharmaceuticals ask, will this drug have harmful side effects? Engineering asks, will this bridge collapse? Finance asks, where should we invest? They don't predict specific outcomes. They make reasonable bets within their risk tolerance and using probability ranges. Let's try to present the same risk 2 ways to drive home this point. Bad, in terms of approach, would be ransomware risk is high, it's red. A good approach would be, or better one, we estimate a 5 to 10% annual probability of a ransomware incident causing a $2 to $8 million loss. And then there's a 1% chance of a catastrophic $20 million event that would trigger regulatory action. See the difference there? The second version generates real conversations. What insurance coverage do we need? Where do we invest in prevention versus resilience? How much capital should we reserve? That is a number on our financial statements. Shostak's OWASP keynote in abandoning risk management proposes other approaches, including that we should take a page out of the books of the Food and Drug Administration and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, where they use prescriptive standards. The FDA, for example, sets acceptable contamination thresholds for food. The NHTSA assigns a dollar value to human life. Why can't we just ask NIST in cybersecurity to pick a number, say an acceptable phishing click rate, so that practitioners can cite the standard instead of arguing with executives? So first I'm going to support that point, and then I'm going to ultimately reject it. The supporting point is that I really do like CISA's Secure by Design initiative and their awesome black hat presentation about it, following similar logic. Government intervention on seatbelts cut through corporate inertia and save lives. But here's where it breaks down. If we want to pick on phishing as one of, more than 106 security outcomes or activities that you need to do in a reasonably comprehensive program, is click rate even the right metric? What about the report rate? That's how quickly the employees flag suspicious emails so the SOC can contain the blast radius. And hey, what about credential submission rate? Isn't that far worse in terms of damage than, clicking a remote access Trojan? Also, and even worse than which number to pick, if you mandate a threshold, employees are going to become afraid to report incidents because they don't want to hurt the numbers. And that's bad for security culture, which is the most important thing we need to cultivate. Your culture is going to get worse, not better, if you take that approach. Prescriptive thresholds work for static hazards, but like Kip Boyle says in his book, Fire Doesn't Innovate, cyber is a dynamic threat, not static. And one size fits all doesn't scale across those 106 outcomes in the NIST cybersecurity framework. NIST tells themselves it's not a prescriptive approach, and it was designed because you can't have one size fits all. Next, in Stop Managing Risk, Shostak recommends engineering mechanisms like Microsoft's bug bars and CVSS. Bug bars settle prioritization arguments by asking about mechanisms. Is it remote? Anonymous? Does it enable privilege escalation? We get the benefit that there's no likelihood debates here. No endless arguments that, I don't want to fix this, it's unlikely. And CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, explicitly distances itself from risk management. It says, I'm a prioritization tool. I certainly don't have a leg to stand on to say these aren't great tools for product security, especially if you sell software. However, bug bars are like a surgeon's checklist, critical for the procedure. But the hospital still needs malpractice insurance. When your CISO presents to the board to justify a 6 or 7 figure security investment, you need to speak the language of business, dollars. To buy cyber insurance, you need probability ranges. When regulators investigate a breach, saying we followed our CVSS thresholds isn't a complete answer for due diligence and due care across the 6 functions and 22 categories of the cybersecurity framework. Bug bars show you prioritize vulns. Risk management is supposed to show that you understood what was at stake. One is a technical process, the other is governance. So if I think we should still be doing risk management, but I can't hang my hat on these engineering mechanisms, what are we left with? Well, I'll leave you with 5 principles. Principle number 1, connect to what the business already understands. I learned from Richard Seierson in our cyber risk quantification podcast, which is linked to in the description, that anyone who tells you that risk tolerance is too abstract of a concept to quantify is probably wrong, because their company probably has insurance limits and capital reserves. The finance team is making educated bets, looking ahead to prudently navigate through the uncertainty of the future. If they're already doing this, our job then is to connect security decisions to those financial frameworks that they're already using and trusting. Principle 2, embrace uncertainty instead of hiding from it. Replace single point predictions with ranges. Instead of 10% probability, $100 million impact, say we estimate a 10% probability, realistically ranging from 5 to 15%. And the impact is expected to be 100 million, but could range from 50 to 200 million, depending on severity. Next, you're going to say, but Steve, where do I get the numbers? I don't have enough data. Again, as I learned from Seierson, and somewhat surprisingly, you have more data than you think. Start with just measuring risk arrival, risk aging, and risk departure, those 3 core things. And for those, you only need 2 numbers, and they can be date and timestamps. There's more on this in the podcast you can check out, and feel free to drop a comment if you have any questions. We start with educated estimates, what Saracen calls calibrated probability. Use industry benchmarks like from the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report and draw from your own incident history. The point isn't precision, it's directional accuracy, because being roughly right beats being precisely wrong. Principle number 3, make your analysis lead to decisions. If your last risk assessment didn't change anything, ask why you did it. The point isn't to fill out a form or produce a heat map. It's to inform resource allocation, justify security investments, and to help leadership make better bets under uncertainty. Every risk analysis should answer, so what's next? And what should we do differently? Principle 4, speak the language of your audience. Your board doesn't understand CVSS scores, and they don't need them. They do need to understand whether a $500,000 security investment is justified by the exposure it addresses. Your security operations team does need CVSS scores, so does your IT team, and your development team needs bug bars for daily triage. It's different tools for different conversations. And principle 5, demonstrate due diligence. When regulators investigate a breach or shareholders ask what went wrong, like we said earlier, following your CVSS thresholds is not a complete answer. You need to show that you understood the potential business impact and made defensible decisions with eyes wide open. So there you go. Risk management has too often become ritual. Heat maps generated, registers maintained, boxes checked, decisions unchanged. When that's what managing risk means, we should absolutely stop doing it. But the answer isn't to abandon the frame. It's to do risk management properly. 3 things you can do on Monday morning. Take a look at your top risks and rewrite them with ranges. 15 to 25% probability of a $2 to $8 million loss. Next, ask, did our last risk assessment change the decision? If not, figure out why. And number 3, match your tools to your audience. Bug bars in sprint planning, quantification, and budget meetings. Risk management isn't broken because it's the wrong tool. It's broken where organizations have been performing the vocabulary instead of practicing the discipline. So let's stop performing risk management and start doing it. If this video helped you think differently about risk, or if you have any questions, drop a comment below. If you want to go deeper into risk management, check out my course with Dr. Gerald Dozier in Simply Cyber Academy. There's a link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the community.